What would make a young girl, barely 18, with fame, beauty, and a career already on fire, suddenly leave everything behind to marry a man old enough to be her grandfather? Why would someone so young, so full of potential, walk away from a rising career, a promising relationship, and a future everyone believed was bright? At the time, she was one of Nollywood's most loved faces, the next big thing, the girl who could have had it all. So what changed? Why give up the possibility of a life filled with youth and ambition for one surrounded by wealth, age, power, and most especially controversy? A lot of people are quick to say she did it for money. But what if it wasn't just about money? What if there was something deeper, something beyond the mansions, the cars, and the luxury lifestyle? What if behind those decisions were pressures we didn't see, family expectations, emotional needs, or even silent struggles that pushed her into a choice that looked glamorous on the outside but was complicated underneath? Because sometimes what looks like a simple decision from the outside is really a reflection of something much deeper inside. This is not a gossip story, it's a psychological exploration into why Regina Daniels made one of the most controversial choices in modern Nollywood. Before the fame, before the mansions, before her name became a constant topic of public debate, there was just a little girl from Asaba with a bright smile and big dreams. Regina Daniels didn't stumble into Nollywood by chance. Acting was almost woven into her DNA. Her mother, Rita Daniels, was already a known actress and producer, a woman who had spent years building a name for herself within the Delta State film circuit. It was under her mother's watchful eyes that Regina first faced the camera. She was barely 7 years old when she featured in her debut movie, Marriage of Sorrow. From that first appearance, something about her stood out. She wasn't just another child on set reading lines. She became the character. Her emotions flowed naturally, her expressions carried depth far beyond her age, and her performance felt so authentic that people began to pay attention. She was that good. There was a spark about her, that rare kind of natural talent you can't teach. As the years passed, Regina became a household name in Nollywood. She starred in films like Miracle Child and many others that defined the child actor era of the late 2000s and early 2010s. She was the little girl whose tears could move an audience to silence and whose laughter could brighten an entire scene. Her acting wasn't forced, it was effortless and natural. But beyond her skill was something else, that unique blend of beauty and innocence that made people fall in love with her. She wasn't just an actress, she was a symbol of promise, a young girl from a modest background who had become one of the faces of Nollywood before even becoming an adult. And through it all, her mother remained by her side, guiding her, protecting her, managing her career. The absence of her biological father was noticeable, but it was her mother's presence that filled that space completely. Regina was not just building a career, she was helping to build a legacy, one that seemed to carry her entire family's hope on its back. By her teenage years, she had achieved what many twice her age only dreamed of. She was famous, loved and respected in the industry. To everyone watching, it seemed like her life was just beginning. But then, in 2019, something unexpected happened. Something that would shock not just her fans, but the entire country. Practically overnight, the young star who had been the nation's sweetheart was suddenly in the headlines for an entirely different reason. News broke that Regina Daniels, barely 19 years old at the time, was set to marry a billionaire politician more than twice her age. The internet erupted. Social media went wild. People didn't know what to believe. How could someone so young, so full of promise, take such a drastic step? That moment marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that would redefine how Nigerians saw her forever. The year was 2019. Regina Daniels was barely 19, young, beautiful, and already living the dream that millions of girls could only imagine. She had the fame, the money, attention, and the love of an entire generation who watched her grow from a little girl on screen into one of Nollywood's brightest stars. But then everything changed. News broke that Regina Daniels was getting married, not to a fellow actor, not to a young businessman, but to a man who was more than 3 times her age, a man old enough not just to be her father, but her grandfather in the literal sense of the word. At first, everyone thought it was a rumor. Social media was filled with disbelief. It's a movie scene, some said. She's shooting a new project. This is just like trying to promote her new movie. But within days, it became painfully clear that this was no script at all. It was reality. Her husband-to-be was a billionaire and politician named Ned Nwoko, a man whose name was not familiar to the entertainment world. He wasn't a celebrity, but he was powerful and wealthy. And that was when the digging began. Online investigators went to work, and soon revelations started to flood the internet. Ned Nwoko, it turned out, wasn't just rich. He was also a man with a long marital history. Regina was not going to be his first wife, not his second, not even his third. She was going to be his 6th wife. The discovery shocked everyone. And then, just when we thought this was the height of it, there came more rumors. People began to whisper that before Regina, Ned had allegedly dated a few Nollywood actresses, women who, according to speculations, turned down his offers of marriage. Some said he had always been drawn to the beauty and glamour of the movie world, and Regina was simply the one who agreed to settle down with him. Of course, these remained rumors, never confirmed, never denied, but they added fuel to an already blazing fire. Then came the father's outburst. For the very first time, Nigerians saw Regina Daniels' biological father, visibly furious and heartbroken. He spoke against the marriage, calling it an abomination for a young girl to be handed to a man old enough to be her ancestor. His voice, however, was drowned in the noise of public opinion and the silence of those around her. Attention soon turned to her mother, Rita Daniels, who many accused of endorsing the union. Questions flew in every direction. Why would the mother agree to do this? Was it about money? Was it pressure? No one had clear answers, but the criticism was relentless. And then, almost suddenly, the wedding happened. It wasn't the kind of wedding anyone expected for someone of Regina's status. There was no celebrity guests, no glamour, no elaborate wedding gown or star-studded reception. Instead, what took place was a traditional ceremony, a very traditional ceremony, quiet, cultural, and according to multiple reports, deeply ritualistic. There were whispers that the young bride had been made to undergo certain traditional rites that involved oath-taking. These were said to be designed to ensure fidelity and eternal loyalty to her husband. Now, imagine that for a moment. A 19-year-old girl standing before elders, made to swear oaths of lifelong submission to a man she barely knew, beyond the wealth and status attached to his name. That kind of experience could do something to a person, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. It was the sort of binding that made people wonder, was she marrying into love, or was she walking into a lifetime of silence? And perhaps that silence is what we began to see in the years that followed. Because despite all the noise around her, Regina Daniels herself rarely spoke. Not about the backlash, not about her father's objection, not about the rumors. She simply smiled, posed for pictures, and played her role as the billionaire's wife. But then again, silence is sometimes louder than words. And now, years later, with the recent controversies and outbursts, and the shocking videos that wasn't even released by her, one can't help but look back to that quiet wedding, those alleged oaths, and that 19-year-old girl standing in a world far older than her. It makes you wonder, was her silence born from peace or from something deeper? That we'll explore later. When the story of Regina Daniels' marriage first broke, everyone seemed to arrive at the same conclusion. She did it for the money. The internet was loud. Memes flew everywhere. People mocked her, saying she once said she would rather cry in a Lamborghini than in a keke napep. Well, now she's crying in one. To many, it was an open and shut case. Young lady plus old billionaire equals to gold digger. End of story. But is it really that simple? Because when you take a step back, when you strip away the noise and all the gossip flying around, and you look closely at human behavior, you realize something. People rarely make life-changing decisions for just one reason. There are always layers, hidden battles, fears that we don't see. And maybe, just maybe, Regina's choice wasn't just about money. Let's look deeper. You see, by every standard, Regina Daniels wasn't doing badly. She was young, famous, and earning from her acting career. She could afford comfort, take care of herself, and probably even support her family to an extent. But fame doesn't always translate to financial stability. Yes, money might have been at the foundation of it all, we can't deny that. But the real question is, why did she think she needed that kind of money? Why did she feel that what she had already wasn't enough? Why did she believe that more money, his kind of money, would somehow fix everything? Because sometimes it's not just about wanting luxury or living a soft life or crying in a Lamborghini. People tend to look at matters in a parallel line. We look at it from a single direction. But sometimes things actually have a lot of layers. Sometimes it's more deeper than that. There's a kind of need that isn't born from greed, but from pressure, fear, or something emotional that people can't see from the surface or from the outside. And here's where the real story begins. We're going to be looking at factors that might have influenced Regina Daniels' decision to marry Ned Nwoko. Factors that are beyond the gossip of, oh, she married him for the money, she's a gold digger. So number one, let's look at family pressure. The weight of responsibility. For many young people who rise to fame early, success doesn't just become personal, it becomes collective. Everyone starts to depend on you. You're no longer just a daughter, you're an investment, a provider, the one who must make it. This happens to a lot of people. People who aren't even popular, that one person that makes it in the family, there's this internal pressure that comes. You are now the stepping stone for everyone in the family. And for Regina, that pressure might have come quietly, the kind that doesn't shout but weighs heavy on your mind. She had a family to care for, a mother who has been through her own struggles, siblings who looked up to her. At a young age, she had already become the breadwinner, the light everyone counted on. So maybe when an opportunity came, one that promised security not just for her, but for everyone she loved, it wasn't just about wanting money. It was about needing stability, about wanting to finally stop worrying, to take care of her family in a way her young career might not have been able to guarantee yet. Because sometimes the most dangerous kind of pressure isn't fame or expectation, it's family. The silent kind that makes you believe every decision you make must save everyone you love. Secondly, it might have been a transactional possibility, that unspoken trade. Sometimes relationships aren't written in the language of love. If you look at far back in times of old, most times marriage was transactional. These things are written in the quiet understanding of exchange. Not every trade is made in words. Some are sealed in glances, gestures, and mutual awareness. And that was how those kind of marriages were formed back then. Maybe that factor still, brought up his head in this case. He had wealth, power that could open doors beyond Nollywood. And she had something money couldn't buy: youth, influence, and the admiration of an entire generation. It's possible that both sides understood what the other brought to the table. For him, she was beauty and relevance, a bridge to a younger world that still fascinated him. For her, he represented opportunity, protection, and the kind of financial safety that many dream of, but never reach. It might never have been said loud, but perhaps there was an understanding. I'll give you stability, you give me your light. Not forced, not coerced, just the meeting of two people who knew what the other offered. And in that quiet exchange, affection might have grown, because sometimes what begins as a transaction slowly blurs into emotion. And by the time you realize it, the lines between love, loyalty, and survival have become impossible to tell apart. Now let's look at emotional security. That safety that comes with maturity. There's something about older men that can make a young woman feel safe. Or at least, that's what many believe. They appear calmer, more patient. They have seen life, made mistakes, and learned from them. And when you're a young woman in the chaos of fame, constantly watched, constantly judged, stability can look like love. Maybe Regina saw in Ned not just wealth, but peace of mind. A man who wouldn't compete with her spotlight, who wouldn't play childish games or break her heart for sport. After all, she was surrounded by stories of young celebrity couples who crashed before they even began. Infidelity, drama, betrayal. So when an older man came along, mature, composed, and seemingly in control, that must have looked like emotional security. Someone who could take care of her, protect her, and handle her world. At that age, many women don't just chase love, they chase peace. And when peace comes wrapped in wealth and wisdom, it becomes even harder to resist. Also, there is internal doubt, the silent enemy within. Sometimes the biggest battle is not the one we fight with the world, it's the one we fight within ourselves. From the outside, Regina looked like a young woman who had it all figured out. Fame, beauty, and a promising career. But inside, who knows what she truly felt? It's possible that deep down she didn't fully believe she could sustain that success on her own. She might have feared that fame, especially for child actors, fades quickly. That one wrong role, one new face, and the world would move on. And maybe she didn't think Nollywood alone could give her the kind of financial stability she dreamed of. That's how internal doubt works. It whispers questions like, what if this doesn't last? What if I can't make it to the top? What if this opportunity never comes again? And when those doubts grow louder than confidence, people start reaching for safety nets, for something or someone that feels like security. For Regina, maybe Ned Nwoko represented that safety net. He wasn't just an older, wealthy man. He was a man whose wealth seemed permanent, whose life seemed too established to crumble. So maybe in the quiet moments, she convinced herself that this was the smarter choice, not out of greed, but out of fear. The kind of fear that comes from not knowing if you will ever get another chance to truly feel safe. Now let's look at maternal influence. Behind every major decision a young woman makes, there is often a voice she trusts. And for Regina, that voice has always been her mother's. From the very beginning of her career, Regina Daniels wasn't just a mother. She was a manager, a guide, and the strongest influence in her daughter's life. So when someone like Ned Nwoko, wealthy, influential, powerful, came into the picture, it's easy to imagine how that conversation might have gone. A mother who has seen life, who had faced the struggles of raising children in a competitive industry like Nollywood, a single mother, might have seen Ned as a man not too old, but as a blessing, a way to secure her daughter's future, and by extension, the family's. And when a mother believes something is destiny, it's hard for a daughter to say no. We can picture the possible reassurance. My child, you are lucky. This kind of opportunity doesn't come twice. I know what I'm saying. It might not have been about greed. We tend to look at it from the angle of, oh, it's all greed. It might have been about protection. A mother trying to shield her daughter from the harsh realities she had faced. But sometimes love and pressure can look the same. And when that pressure comes from someone you love deeply, it doesn't always feel like force. It feels like guidance. So maybe Regina didn't just marry Ned because she wanted to. Maybe she also married him because her mother believed she should. Finally, let's look at the illusion of love. When charm meets vulnerability. Love has a way of blinding reason, especially when it comes wrapped in attention, luxury, and promises of forever. Regina was young, impressionable, and perhaps emotionally open. So when a man like Ned Nwoko, older, articulate, confident, and powerful, began to show her affection, it may have felt different, mature, very clean and certain. Maybe he said all the right words, the kind of words that painted her not as a child star, but as a woman. He might have made her feel like she was stepping into something special, not a relationship defined by age, but by destiny. And let's not forget the grand gestures, the cars, the trips, the gifts. For a young woman, those weren't just material things. They were symbols of love, validation, and worth. I'll make you understand this point more easily. For women who are listening to this video, who have been in a relationship, remember when you first met that man, you might not have felt like you loved him, but when he began to spend, the love begins to grow. You feel, oh, this guy really loves me, because then we measure love by, oh, how much has he invested? And for most women, investments comes with, the material things he does. So when a man is spending lavishly, it quickly translates to, oh, he loves me. So we're not going to be so judgmental, because these are things that happen with everyday women, not just Regina. These things could have easily created the illusion that this was not a transaction, not a convenience, but something deeper, richer. But sometimes what looks like love at the surface can quietly be control, wearing a charming smile. And once you are in too deep, it's hard to tell where affection ends and possession begins. So maybe, just maybe, Regina didn't see herself as marrying an old man for his money. She saw herself as marrying a man who made her feel loved. Now that we have seen the possible reasons why Regina Daniels might have married Ned Nwoko beyond money, there is one question that lingers in everyone's mind. Why has she stayed this long? Why hasn't she spoken up? Not even now, when everything seems to be falling apart. There is one line I drew from her video. She said, "The violence is too much." Why did she stay, even though the violence is too much? Because here's the truth. She hasn't even said a word. The viral video that set the internet on fire wasn't even posted by her. It came from a colleague, a man known as Stanley on Top, who according to reports couldn't bear to keep quiet any longer. And not long after, Regina's own brother came out to confirm what many feared, that this wasn't just gossip, this was real. But Regina, she's still silent, no statement, no interview, no post, nothing. And that silence speaks volumes. It could be fear, it could be the shame of being laughed at, or maybe, just maybe, it's the weight of everything she's bound to. You see, from the very first start, her marriage was sealed not just with vows, but with oaths, traditional rites that were set to bind her to her husband spiritually, to make sure that she would never betray or walk away from him. For a 19-year-old girl, that's not just commitment, that's a form of control. And when you grow into that kind of control, it becomes hard to tell where loyalty ends and fear begins. Then there is power. Because this isn't just any man. This is a man of means, of influence, of connections that stretch far beyond the entertainment industry. When a person like that decides to protect his image, they don't play fair. They paint the woman as unstable, unfit, even dangerous. Anything to discredit her voice before she even gets the chance to use it. So when Ned came out with claims saying she's being influenced by bad company, that she's losing herself, she's into DRUG, it fits perfectly into that age-old script. Discredit her before she can speak. Silence her before she becomes a threat. And maybe Regina knew this. Maybe she's kept quiet not because she's weak, but because she knows the war she's fighting isn't one that she can easily win. Then there is comfort, the golden cage. Over the years, she's gotten used to a certain kind of lifestyle. The luxury, the travels, the soft life that most people only dream of. How do you walk away from that when your entire identity has been shaped around it? Especially when your career isn't what it used to be, and your husband's wealth is the backbone of your lifestyle, even your family's stability. And let's not forget the children. A mother's greatest fear isn't losing fame or fortune, it's losing her kids. If she speaks out too strongly, what happens next? Would she lose custody? Would she be seen as unfit? Maybe silence for her is survival. So yes, she's quiet, but her silence doesn't mean there is peace. It might mean she's simply choosing the lesser evil. Because for women in her position, walking away isn't just about leaving a man. It's about living a life, a name, and sometimes even the children you brought into the world. And that's why, despite everything we see online, the gossip, the chaos, the tears, the accusations, there is still a very real possibility that Regina Daniels might go back to him. Not because she wants to, but because sometimes the world doesn't give women like her another choice. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Or do you still maintain that she did it all for the money, solely for the money? Leave your thoughts in the comments.